All right, hi there, everyone. Welcome to Believe in Bills. Adam Bonini, WGRZ TV, Sports Talk Live, Buffalo, Sal Mayorana, Rochester, Democrat and Chronicle, as always, and a terrific guest joining us today from the New Jersey, New York City area, someone we've had on Sports Talk Live before, Dianna Russini, who is now the lead insider for The Athletic, formerly with ESPN. Dianna, thank you so much. It's been a quiet week for you down there. Nothing much going on.
Yeah, right. It is so good to be back with you and during a week that was really surprising, right? I don't think anyone's surprised that the Jets fired Robert Saleh. I just think the timing of it, so early in the year, you guys know I've been covering the league for quite some time, and I really can't recall the last time a coach was fired after week 5. And obviously there's so many different tentacles to this, Adam, because they had this chance to do it after last year. They knew everything they needed to know about what they were going to get out of Robert Saleh. But Woody Johnson, the owner of the Jets, made the decision to run it back. He really wanted to keep everything intact. It's almost like he wanted everything from last year to just disappear. And after the loss to the Denver Broncos at MetLife Stadium in the rain against rookie Bo Nix, the ownership was not happy. In fact, I was told that there was a meeting on Monday after that game, and he was lighting everybody up in that meeting. And then a week later, they go to London and they lose to their former quarterback, Sam Darnold, and the Vikings. And that flight home, Woody made the decision that he needed to make a change. Took another day, and then it was Tuesday morning. He walked into the Jets facility in Florham Park, New Jersey, didn't tell anyone that he was going to do it, and told Robert Saleh that he's been dismissed.
It's crazy. And what strikes me, Dan, I get all the things that you just laid out all make a lot of sense because I think Saleh has underachieved with the roster he's had. I know they had quarterback issues, but they built a really good defense. That should have been a more competitive team. But what strikes me, like you pointed out, it's so unusual in week 5 to have a coach firing, especially for a team that if they win Monday night is in first place in their division. That particular circumstance really makes this unique in my eyes.
I don't think the Buffalo Bills are happy about this.
No.
I think the Buffalo Bills think they had a better chance with Robert Saleh in place and it being a little messy. You look at this roster, guys, and this is the way Woody Johnson sees it too. This isn't just me. This is a roster built to win. They have talent top to bottom. Do you know how many coaches I talked to in the league who wish they had some of the players on their team? Yet their teams are able to compete and figure out ways to win. And this Jets team is just a bunch of very talented players who just don't appear to have that leadership. And they don't really appear to always be on the same page, especially on offense, right? So a lot of the conversations people are having right now is this Aaron Rodgers? Is he the problem here? Was Robert Saleh really just the scapegoat in all of this? And I do think organizations are going to look at the situation like this and say, are we going to stick with the 4-time MVP who has moments where he is spectacular? Or do we move on from the guy who's just not taking us to the next level? And so now they're making a change with their offensive play calling now. So Nathaniel Hackett, as you guys know, is Aaron Rodgers' very good friend. They're very loyal to one another. They've been together in Green Bay, or at least they were together in Green Bay. And so he brought him over here to New York, and he's now been demoted. So Nathaniel Hackett will no longer be play calling. Todd Downing, the quarterback's coach, was elevated today. And so, look, I look at it as Todd Downing did a decent job with the Tennessee Titans, really good in the red zone, really good at running the ball. But it's Aaron Rodgers, right? He's going to call the plays at the line of scrimmage anyway. He's going to call it out to his receivers what he wants to do. So I think as long as Todd Downing can support Aaron, improve this offensive line, the pass protection is really where we've seen some issues as well. They could get a little shot in the arm here on Monday Night Football.
I was going to say exactly what I said yesterday on the show, Adam. The first game bump is legitimate in the NFL. It doesn't usually end up working out long term. I told him yesterday, you've probably seen the stat, Diana, it's in the Super Bowl era. The only team that's ever made the playoffs when they made an in-season change was the Raiders in 21 when Bisaccia took over for Gruden. So there's that first game bump, but it generally does not lead to long-term success. Now, it might be different with the Jets because, as I said, this is a team that could be in first place by Monday. They've got a good roster. So the first game bump, I think, is really a thing for the Bills. And you're absolutely right, Dianna. This was the wrong week for the Bills to have this happen in New York.
Yeah, we'll get into all the specifics now of the matchup. And Dianna obviously wants your take on the situation in Buffalo as well. Some controversy there, some coaching decisions in question, Josh Allen's play, a long injury report of some pretty impactful players. So there's a lot to talk to as we get to this game. But I also want to focus on maybe a broader context of what's happened in New York as we've arrived at this point. First, a quick word from the sponsor here. Let's get that taken care of. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. Dianna, if we can, let's go back before we get into the X's and O's of what's going to happen and potentially down there on Monday night. Your reporting on the Jets as a franchise with The Athletic as the lead insider for them has been extensive. A lot of people read your in-depth report with so many sources about the level of dysfunction that's taken place inside that organization. And I think everyone's waiting for them to kind of rise up and be the top competitor for the Buffalo Bills in terms of what would now be a fifth straight division title for Buffalo. But I just would love to hear some background from you with reference to that reporting because, well, this week surprised a lot of people. You know, that there's context to it, and it's a situation where there's been some kind of tremors in the volcano, if you will, kind of finally erupted this week.
Yeah, I would say the volcano had erupted already last year. And Adam, it's so interesting because I've learned this since we reported on the Jets' dysfunction after last season. We told stories of Robert Saleh walking around the building with his hoodie on, not talking to anybody, just trying to avoid any interaction. We told stories of Saleh being concerned that people were texting with reporters and people in media and wanted to collect phones to see who's talking to who. There was just so much paranoia there all the time because they were being criticized so much. For a lot of bad decisions. And it just appeared that they quit after Aaron Rodgers was hurt on Monday Night Football, 4 plays in. And it's almost like they were okay with going, well, we built this whole thing around him. We don't have him. So let's just take a mulligan on this and we'll run it back next year from top to bottom. It just appeared that that's how they were doing business, despite the fact that they were able to actually win a few games with some backup quarterbacks and Tim Boyle, and Zach Wilson. And, we even had some drama midseason. Zach Wilson benched. Then they brought him back. He didn't want to go back in there. He said, why would I go back in there? You just told me you're trading me. So there are a lot of miscommunications, a lot of missteps in dealing with the PR side to a team that was struggling. And then, of course, the overreigning power that Aaron Rodgers has. I know recently he spoke on Pat McAfee talking about how, man, people think I have all this power. You do. You have all the power. You have all of it. And you could argue that's smart of the Jets because he knows how to win. So I've never criticized Woody Johnson's willingness to hand it over. It's just how they've been able to divvy up the power has really been the thing that's in question. And the other thing I learned, guys, in this, I don't think fans want to really know how ugly it is underneath sometimes. I thought that by doing a piece about dysfunction and what really happened, Jets fans would either rally together and maybe get more excited for this year or switch teams, join the Giants, whatever it is. I thought the knowledge would help the fans understand why it wasn't a good year. But I realized fans actually don't want to know. They want to just be told that there's hope and there's optimism and things are going to be better. So my personal interactions with Jets fans have been really wild since that story came out, only because they don't want to hear it. And they've said it to me, like, we don't stop reporting on us. We don't want to know.
Dianna, I get more shit from fans when I write something negative. Now, the Bills have been a very good team for several years, but they aren't perfect. And whenever I write something negative, just telling it like it is, I just get hammered. You get hammered by fans who don't want to hear it. And we had the same situation. A buddy of ours, Tyler Dunn, Tyler, He wrote the big expose on McDermott last year. That was spectacular reporting up and down, just a great series of articles. And he got skewered by Bills fans. Bills fans didn't want to know any of that stuff. They think everything is wonderful, and he got killed for it. And that's exactly,
they
I think,
make
what you're
it
talking
personal
about.
too. They think you have some vendetta.
Yeah.
And the part of it that Jets fans don't even realize, and as journalists, we don't share, but I grew up a Jets fan.
Mhm.
So I have an actual human connection to the organization. I had some of my greatest moments learning football being a Jets fan. So I want to see them succeed. I live in Jets land. It's fun when they win. So I hate that they make it personal, but I also understand it. I get it. It's sports has this beautiful way of sort of masking the ugly of the world, and they don't want their team to be part of that ugliness.
Yeah.
I think
Dianna, my first Bills game, I was born in Buffalo, Bills fan when I was a kid. My first game, 1970 at the old Rock Pile, Joe Namath against O.J. Simpson. So I go back a ways, and I was a fan of the team. But you're right. We got to put that aside.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for 35 years. I haven't been a fan for a hell of a long time. But sometimes fans think that we are fans covering the team, and everything
Correct.
has to be positive. It drives me nuts.
No,
Yeah.
I'm 33 years in, Sal and Dianna, and I would just echo that. I think that the thing I find myself very frequently explaining to fans is the objectivity factor. I mean, we've all, and journalism has changed, right? But we've all been at it a long time. I mean, I came up through Syracuse University, the Newhouse School. I mean, you were taught certain things about objectivity and sourcing and that from a news perspective as it applied to sports. And so you keep a critical distance so that you can do the type of reporting that we're talking about here. And I think that those who aren't familiar with that approach and those kind of guidelines and canons, if you will, of what we do, both in news and sports, I think at times don't quite understand it. So I think it's a good point and an interesting part of this discussion. So speaking of critical journalism, let's turn our attention to the Buffalo Bills. And Dianna, just from you are, you cover the NFL nationally for The Athletic, very familiar with what's going on here. I mean, Josh Allen is, when we say upper echelon quarterback, he's one of the top 2 or 3 in the NFL. It's obvious they were transitioning this roster, Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott, a little bit relative to the salary cap and moving on from Stephon Diggs. But the last couple of games, the losses to Baltimore and Houston have really revealed some things and validated some of our concerns in the preseason. Injuries, of course, have also been a factor, and questionable coaching given the way that the Houston game ended on that final possession for Buffalo. What's your take on where things stand right now with the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, you laid that out perfectly. Now, look, I think starting off hot as they did made it difficult because I actually felt like this was the first season where I think people had really realistic understandings of what this team was going to be. I didn't spend a lot of time this summer talking about Buffalo winning. In fact, I predicted they wouldn't even make the playoffs. And then they come out on fire. And I'm like thinking to myself, of course, the one season I bet against them in my mind. But look, the blemishes are showing a little, the issues, the holes. I think they're going to get it fixed. I think it's okay to sort of go through this at this point in the season to figure it out. This is where sometimes I know some teams struggle with winning out of the gate because of this. It masks a lot of the issues, and now we're seeing them. But I watched that Ravens Buffalo game, the Bills Ravens game with very little concern because I realized that there's a lot of young players on this roster. It was a big moment. Playing in Baltimore is hard. I think it's one of those underrated moments on a Sunday night game. They didn't seem panicked to me, just observing from that game standing out in terms of a big spotlight game. So I think that stuff's all recoverable. So yes, there are issues, but I think they're going to be able to sort this out. And look, they're monitoring the receiver market before this trade deadline. They've got their eye on Devontae Adams. I don't think they're going to be able to land them, but they're hoping they can pull it off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure you're in touch with Brandon on this. I just saw him yesterday, but he's not giving it up to me. But yeah,
he ain't giving it to me either. He just sends me emojis. Thanks.
But they've got to do something, Dan. You're right. They're not going to get Devontae Adams. There's no way they can make that work on the cap. They just moved on from a $30 million receiver and Steph Diggs. If that was the plan, they would have just kept Diggs. So
exactly.
We all know that's not going to happen. But there are other guys out there. I mean, Amari Cooper's name keeps coming up because of the Cleveland disaster, and his contract is actually workable. I can see that. Deontay Johnson's another name that I've sort of heard on the periphery down in Carolina. They're obviously going nowhere. It's another contract that could be, brought into Buffalo. And there's the Dan Morgan connection there with Bean. So maybe two old buddies can work something out. But would you agree they have to do something?
Yeah. I think I think they know they have to make a move, but anytime I deal with teams that are in the hunt like this, they don't want to be panicky because they don't want to make bad decisions. But I think if we see again on Monday Night Football, this really good Jets defense, give Josh no options, because Josh being the answer to every problem he can't sustain it. He does a darn great job doing it, but he needs more. So we'll see if this picks up.
I can't imagine what's going to happen if James Cook can't play. I mean, we don't know the status yet. It's a Monday game, so it's going to be delayed on the injury report. But if he can't go, I have big worries for the Bills in this game Monday night for sure.
Yeah, that's going to be concerning, and the Jets are just going to force Josh. Just put him in a lot of positions, knowing he doesn't have a lot of options. They're going to be putting tons of pressure on him on Monday night.
All right, so let's go ahead and sort of launch into that specific to the game itself, because teams, whether it be Baltimore or certainly Houston last week, Dianna, the run blocking has been very reasonable and good for this offensive line. The pass protection has been an entirely different story. Teams have been able to pressure Josh Allen. We've talked about the receiver core, the group that they have right now, and moving on from Stephon Diggs, the lack of an explosive downfield passing game. These guys aren't getting open, and so the pressure's getting Josh off schedule, and the passing game goes into a downward spiral, and that's really a lot behind what we've seen. Add to that, historically, as well as anyone, that this Buffalo offense has had real issues with this New York defense, particularly in the secondary. And so how much of a challenge is this for Buffalo in light of those factors and the coaching changes we've seen in the one-game bump, which has been kind of a thing for teams when they do make a coaching change in the past? It adds up to an awful lot against Buffalo on Monday.
It does. This is going to be one of the tougher ones this season. Jeff Ulbrich, the interim head coach, is going to continue calling plays on defense as well. And look, they're proud in New York about being a top 5 defense. They like to let you know. And they're going to try to sustain that. And because they like Jeff Ulbrich so much, he's such a player coach, that locker room is going to rally behind him. And specifically that he's the defensive minded head coach that's now taken over as the new one. I think that gives this defensive group even just more juice. So I'm with you. I think the James Cook factor is huge for this Buffalo offense, just knowing what they're up against, especially with that front seven.
What do you think, Deanna, in terms of the Jets pass rush? I mean, I can't imagine if they had Hassan Reddick, imagine what they would be. But what have you seen, because you've paid closer attention to them, with their pass rush, and how much of a problem can that be for the Bills?
Yeah, so I feel like they've been pretty inconsistent, actually, this season. I know even in the summertime when I was spending a lot of time around them and hanging out with who they were practicing with at those joint practices. And I remember I was walking off the field with Zach Ertz with the Commanders. And he's like, "Can I tell you something?" I'm like, "Yeah, what's up? You good?" He's like, "The Jets front is," and he used an F word, "scary." And I was like, "Oh," like I didn't even ask him that. Like he just volunteered it to me coming right off the field in the rain. And I think of Zach all the time when I'm watching this Jets, because he was right. He called it in the summer. Look, I just think if their offense can give them a break, because that's been a big issue that guys in that locker room have been complaining about a bit, it's just that accountability, and helping the defense out by running the ball better, taking care of the ball better, because they're on the field too much. And you take a look at the stats right now. The Jets defense is on the field way too much for what they want.
All right, so now let's talk about that before we wrap this up. You know, in light of all the turmoil of this week, the change now with Downing calling the plays, Aaron Rodgers embroiled in all of this and going against a Buffalo defense that has dealt with a lot of injuries. And listen, rallied in the second half against Houston, almost won them the game. How do you see things playing out on that side of the matchup?
I think that Buffalo is going to learn from some of these mistakes that they've been making the last 3 games. I think if the Bills want to take advantage of anything, it's just the fact that Aaron's not playing as good as he needs to be playing. And I don't know what it is. He is banged up a little bit. I don't think that's going to prevent him from being great. But the fact that they've got a new play caller, maybe instead of them looking at it as an advantage, this can be something for the Jets. The Bills can look at it as he doesn't have his guy, right? Nathaniel Hackett's been the one in his ear the whole time. So look, I feel like I'm digging hard on it because I am entering Monday night believing that the Jets certainly have the advantage unless the Bills can really figure out something on offense here to scare this defense a bit.
Diana, what is going on with Breece Hall? I mean,
Yeah.
we've seen him play the Bills, and he's killed the Bills.
Yeah, there's so much disconnect on offense, right? That look at Garrett Wilson too. Sometimes they look spectacular, and sometimes I'm like, what is happening? And some of it's the play calling, some of it's Aaron Rodgers' decision making. Sometimes it's just offensive line play in general. It's been a lot of moments of just being out of sync, and that's why you're seeing changes.
All right, Diana, thank you so much. Both of these offenses kind of in a state of controversy, crisis, and turmoil a little bit here, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Thank you so much. Again, people can follow all of your work at The Athletic, right?
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right, for Sal Mayorana and Dianna Russini, I'm Adam Bonini. Thank you for being with us here on Believe in Bills.